Welcome to the Pharsyde series on business owner challenges. Today I am joined by the awesome Megan Deers. Megan, thank you so much for coming. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Tamron. Great to be here, and yes, glad to be back chatting to you.
Megan, you're a copywriter, content writer, correct?
Copywriter, content creator, that's me.
And what
That's
made you
correct.
choose this line of work? What brought you to where you are today?
I've always been interested in reading, always surrounded by books, always fascinated by the written word. And I think my dad, I was actually thinking about this last night, my dad had a huge role to play in that. My dad literally used to do vocab exercises with me on a day-to-day basis. He'd give me books to read and give me homework based on a chapter, find the synonyms, find better power words for that. He'd make me look up words if I don't understand it. And every evening he would actually sit with me and go, right, you've done your homework, so now let's use that in a sentence. And that's how I remember all of this starting.
That
But
is
I've
amazing.
always been a bookworm, always curious. And I mean, all of that comes together in a space where if you are a creative thinker, automatically you think, okay, this can turn into a story. This can be done in that way. This can be written in that way. And I think that's where it started. But it's been a long journey to this point of starting my business in this space. Lots of factors played a part, but it's a place I knew I would always get to.
I
So
love
yeah,
that. I think that's amazing. I'm also a bookworm.
love
Love
it.
reading. Um,
Absolutely.
So, and I think I spent, I was a nerd at school, child, one
Yes.
of those, you just wanted to sit in the corner and read my book. I didn't want to go play the games or join the sports or any of those things that are probably healthy and good for you. I didn't want to do them. I wanted to read.
Yeah, I can recall being called a nerd a few times myself. Yeah, I think I was so deep into my books and myself at the time that it didn't really bug me though. And it's one of those things that I think we need to reintroduce to kids today, because that joy of reading, that adventure of reading, just the escape it offers in terms of where you can go and what you can think, what your imagination can come up with. I am a huge advocate for that. And I really think that that's something that's missing today. So I'm trying to get to a place in my business where the next step is following that up passionately and making impact in that space.
I love that. I think it's so much more important than people realize. They actually, I can't cite the study, so I'm just going to sound like I'm making it up. But I know there was a psychological study where they looked into success, for children, and they discovered that children who were successful in life, and by successful, I don't mean, that they made millions but they
Yes,
had good, stable lives, they good careers, they maybe improved their status from where they were as children to where they were
right.
as adults. All of them came from homes with books, every single one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my saying is always, in that space, you can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be a mechanic, you can be whatever and have a profession. But at
Mm.
the end of the day, if your literacy is not up to scratch, if you can't understand that contract that your next big job is offering you, how do you get ahead?
Mm.
I think it forms the basis of everything. So that is why it's so important for me. And just I've seen the joys it brings, I've seen the fun in it, and I'd love to be able to share that.
Oh, I love that. I think it's amazing. I know you share it already. I know not with children, but your ability to take what adults are trying to say about their business or their service and help them communicate that is important, because I think it is something, it's linked to reading, and it's something we seem to have lost over time, is the ability to communicate with each other.
Yes. And I've started off in this space with my business as purely a written communication space. And as I've developed over the last 2 years, I suddenly found myself in a space where I'm doing verbal communication as well. And they do tie together. I just always saw my business kicking off as a written communication space because I love writing and, the side of content where people are actually in that space where they choose to go and read something rather than passing it by because it's uninteresting and so on.
Yeah.
And I think that communication is highly imperative in our space because there's so much. If you look at one typical example, just a team working together, in your mind, you are carrying across a message, and there are 7 people getting 7 different versions of that as you speak, based on their perception and their experience. So I think it is highly imperative that we enforce that we encourage proper communication and effective communication in all the spaces we're in.
No, it's so true. And I mean in even in our personal lives, the relationships, I find quite embarrassingly that some of the biggest fights I've had with my husband, when we finally get to a resolution, we discover we've been saying the same thing, but in
Yes, we've
different
been
words
there
or
too.
from different perspectives, and actually we shouldn't have been fighting at all because we were in agreement the whole time.
Absolutely. And you know what I also find besides that is the fact that I tend to live in my head, like a lot of creatives do. And when I speak to anyone, whether it's my family, someone else, I've got to take real care to actually finish the sentence because I'm
Yeah.
living so deep in my head that I start the sentence and I drift off into nothingness. And I expect them to know what I'm talking about and what the rest of the conversation was like, you know. So yeah, that's been my faltering point. So yeah,
Do you do it
taking
the
a lot
other way
of care.
around? Because my husband does it the other way around. He has half of the conversation in his head and he starts it with me halfway through and he just assumes
Yes.
that I know where he is and you know what's coming next. So
Yeah, I've got a husband like that too. Sometimes I just go, just hold on. Where did this come from? That's my typical view. Where did this come from? You know, because we were talking about this 1 second ago, and now suddenly we are here. And it just shows you how deep inside our own heads we live sometimes. And you just, yeah, I don't know how long you've been married for, but I mean, my husband and I have been together for 23 years, and they do say that you tend to finish one another's sentences, but it's really hard to do that when your sentences start in your own head. So it's
yes,
crazy.
yeah. And I mean that's something I've realized with work relationships as well. It's the same thing is we tend to I made one of the mistakes I made when building my business was the assumption that other people thought like me. And
Yes.
not just, you know, generally speaking, you think within your profession. So I started an accounting business, so I'm going to hire bookkeepers, and you think now these are bookkeepers, they're the same profession as me, they're going to approach things like I do. They're going to approach a
Yeah.
client like I do. They're going to approach the work like I do. But they're their own individual person.
Right.
So, you know, they're not necessarily going to do it the same way or
And
word it the same way or even think about talking to the client the same way. And
absolutely.
it's hard. It's something I think as business owners it's very important to learn is that
Yes,
people are not you and you've got to meet them where they are.
absolutely. And you know what? Adding to that, sometimes they don't even understand your approach. So it's not a matter of them doing something completely opposite to you just because, you know, they're being stubborn, or sometimes they just don't understand the approach that you're taking. And again, living in your own head, it's so obvious and it should be obvious to everyone. And that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Um, but we do forget that people come from all walks of life and they come with different experiences, different knowledge on board, etc. And so there is such a variation in the way we approach things. And it is really important to remember that. And I'm quite thankful because I find that I've, over the years, developed a really good skill of making a very good one-on-one connection with people, whether or not we are existing in a team. And so I could pretty naturally find their sweet spot and their zone and work with them in that way. And so for me, it's been quite an easy journey, but I do tend to find there are just certain communication styles that I don't do very well with.
Mm, mm,
And so that has been something for me that I've had to work on because I would automatically, for example, think someone is being abrupt
mm.
when they speak to me and my hackles rise immediately. And then you realize, oh no, this person talks like that to even his 2-year-old kid, because that's just, the way he is. He's got a gruff voice, whatever the case might be. And there's all those little nuances that form part of communication, the body language, the tone, all of those things just come together into one space. And of course, your perception is what you make of it.
Yes, yeah, so important, hey. And I mean, talking of perception as well, it's also a humbling lesson you have to learn as a business owner, is that you're not always right. So
Yeah,
you
sure.
need to, and that's where communication is also very important, because you need to have open communication with your team members so that they feel safe disagreeing. Or if they're not outright
Right.
disagreeing, they're at least presenting their opinion to you, or saying, have you thought of trying it this way, or doing it,
Right.
and you got to be open, first of all, to create that environment, and secondly, to actually hear them and listen to
Yes.
what they're saying.
Yes. And really give it some airtime. Sometimes somebody would say something to you in a meeting, and in the flow of a conversation, I would respond to them. And later on during the day or in the week, a different approach to that would strike me, or a different angle to what they were saying would strike me. And I'd actually go back to the person and go, okay, hold on, just hold a second. When you said that, was this where you were going? Or because that's what I got out of the conversation, or is this where you were going? And very often you come up with really brilliant ideas in that space, because suddenly there's more being added onto that presented idea that hit the light in the first place. So
Sure, I
yes, it's
love that.
important to actually, to really validate it in that moment, and actually just be on the same page, make sure you're on the same page, because a lot of great things come from it. And
And that's
I
what,
had,
sorry.
sorry, I had a really good technical mentor at one of my places of work. And we had a technical briefing meeting every week, because we dealt with a lot of instrumentation and new products and so on. And he would always had this huge whiteboard on his office wall where we would get together. And the first thing he would write on the whiteboard, there are no such thing as stupid questions. And number two, if everybody's thinking the same, somebody's not thinking. And we used to sit and go, hold on, let's read that again. And it makes sense, because that's the way he invited each of us to climb into the space and be open and to share what we're thinking. And that's how we came up with creative ideas to approaching our campaigns, our sales, etc. So I think having that approach with people is really important for them to actually see in your actions, but also hear in the way that you speak to them, and the way you approach them in general, that you are open to it. You
Sure,
are
that's
open to hearing their opinion and their voice.
really important. Yeah, I love that. I just love the fact also that you were humble enough to go back to people afterwards and say, actually, what you've said, I responded, but I'm now questioning my response. I want to know if I actually understood you.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and very few people will even think that far. So,
Oh, thank you. I think for me it was definitely bred in the space of curiosity, because for me, I'm a divergent thinker. It's something I embrace completely. And like I said, I live in my own head. So straight off the bat, I would have a response to something and
mm,
then think about it deeper going forward. And so I had many of those moments. And there's a lot of people that I go to, and I almost have to rehash the conversation with a second level of perception,
mm, mm.
and then go, okay, now we've got more to work with, and just looking at it from a different perspective. So, I mean, that's pretty much the story of my life, I think.
That's amazing. I love it. I think it's such a great way to approach everything, because, you that curiosity, it's going to keep you improving and growing yourself, which
Yes,
will grow your business, improve your business, improve things for your clients, improve your
yes,
personal life. I think it's amazing to have that constant desire to learn.
yes. No, that in itself is really important personally, and as a business owner, I can't advocate for that more, because I was brought up that way, that knowledge is the basis of everything. It's just both my parents were always pushing us siblings to just not outdo ourselves, not kill ourselves doing it, but really to apply ourselves and to be present when it came to our education and just getting ahead. And again, like you said earlier, it's not a matter of successful being, earning millions and all of that, just being able to be happy with the space that you've created, whatever your career choice is, but also just to be able to keep improving. And I think that's one big seed that they planted with us. And so I definitely think that that is a place, why that place is so important for me.
It's amazing, yeah. I'm sure your parents are really pleased actually by how you turned out because you're living their values, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And, I'm amazed. My father's 75 years old and he gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Those people don't sleep. So he gets up and makes himself a cup of tea at 3 o'clock in the morning and does his crossword puzzles. And he is one of the happiest people if you give him a new crossword puzzle book or something to read. He's been living it his entire life. And my father's been a laborer all his life, but he was one of those people you could speak to about any topic and he would know something about. And for me, that was a huge inspiration because
Mm,
I'm like that now, where anything that catches my eye is something to go and read about, check out and research. And that for me was, like I said, the hugest inspiration because it just showed you that it didn't matter what your schooling was and, where you ended up work-wise, career-wise, whatever it is. If you've got that hunger to
mm.
actually keep improving yourself and keep learning, fully accessible to you.
Absolutely, yes. That's amazing. My grandmother was similar. She had to
Okay.
stop school at 16 because
Yes.
her father passed away, so she never finished school. And yet
Yes.
my gran knew more than I think all the people I knew.
Yeah.
Her general knowledge, her knowledge of history, of business,
Yes.
of economics and politics, and she could hold a conversation with just about anybody. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
And it was just
Absolutely.
because she was curious and she wanted to learn.
Yes. And I mean, I'm known. At some point I was teased about being the person that would walk into a bathroom, for example, and read the back end of the ingredients list on some of the products and cleaning products, etc. It helped me later on when I was in the science world. Absolutely helped me decipher some of that. But that's the kind of person I am, because when somebody shoots out a word into nothingness, I'll go, I think that links with that. And somewhere along the way, I would have come across it. And so that curiosity has really gotten me into space again where I feel comfortable communicating about most things
Mm.
with most people. And I just feel it's something that a lot of people miss out on because they don't prioritize that learning or reading space.
Yeah, it's very important. It's
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that you're so passionate about helping children, and then that's where you
Yeah.
want to be going, because I think it is really important, and particularly in South Africa we have so many children who can't afford books, actually. That's the bottom line. Their families are
Yeah.
focused on survival. They're not
Right.
focused on growing books and reading and literacy, and
Yeah.
and I think it's such an important thing that it will help them change their world, change their lives if they
Absolutely.
can
And
read.
that's the full intention. It's about getting them into that space. I mean, as you mentioned, most of our kids don't even have a parent or a set of parents around them anymore.
Yeah.
So who's going to be the person that sits down and reads with them?
Mm,
Can't expect teachers in the current situation to be that person. Most often, because of the social circumstances, the family members, the grannies, the aunts, the uncles that we were used to growing up with around us, they are all working.
mm,
They're
mm.
not in a place to be able to offer that either. So I'm very passionate about that space. And I think my legacy program, as I call it, the academy for the kids that I'm working on, is basically a space where I want the kids to come in and very first module is about actually just understanding the importance of literacy in your individual space. I want to make it really clear to each of those kids that this is the key to unlocking everything. And, you know, that's where you're going to find your dreams. That's where you're going to be able to explore your passions, all in one little space of language and literacy. And there's a lot more to the program that I'm building, but that's definitely the basis that I'm working on.
So, Megan, just finish off our chat quickly. Your passion for literacy and books is what led you to where you were, and you're just talking about how important it is for the future now. And it actually made me think of a quote I read the other day. It said, when the world is falling down around you, head to the library, because if you don't find an answer in the books, at least you can read something that will distract you.
Absolutely. My kind of quote. Absolutely. And I have to agree with that. And, you know, I love this concept. I saw a write-up somewhere. I don't even remember when it was. It was a few months back. And somewhere in my vast collection of screenshots, I've got it somewhere because I'm one of those serial screenshot takers. When something catches my eye, screenshot it to go back to later. But I saw something where in certain parts of the world, they have human libraries. And so you are invited into a space to speak to someone about their life and what their journey has been like. So it's like a life book, and you get to have a conversation for a set amount of time with a person.
That's
and
amazing.
how cool is that?
That is amazing. You learn someone else's perspective about everything they've been through.
Absolutely. How cool is that? I mean, that if that's not a way to take the concept of a library forward in a fantastic and creative way, then I don't know what is.
Amazing. I love that idea. I think it's such a fantastic concept. And before we wrap up with this little bit, Megan, I just wanted to ask, do you have advice for a business owner right now who's either starting out their business or they're struggling to get it going? What would you say to them helped you in your business building journey?
Lots of advice, lots of head knocks along the way. So definitely advice. Find people around you that help you and guide you, number one, because I think when I found that, my business actually started ticking. So that's the first thing. Second thing is do what you can as soon as you can to actually find your zone, your power, because I ran around for about a year just trying to figure out who I was and what the space was that I was creating. And it's definitely a huge part of my journey that I appreciate. But at times I feel that I could have been a year ahead had I not actually just started running around the same tree all the time. So definitely just find ways to get into your powerful zone as soon as possible. And thirdly, just open yourself up to opportunity. The business that I started less than 2 years ago is not the business that I had envisioned, purely because as things change in your world, you've got to adapt. And so be open to that, be flexible. I am one of the least flexible person I know. That's just based on my last 40 years. But this space has taught me that by being flexible, you open yourself up to so much more opportunity. So definitely those are some of my top ones.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say we're going to share this little recording on social media, and that if anyone wants to reach out to learn more about your business or hopefully to support you also in your legacy of teaching children, what is the best way to communicate with you?
I think at this point in time, definitely LinkedIn, Megan Deers, that's me. And I will be launching my website pretty soon, so that will go up as well. But definitely LinkedIn is the key platform that I operate on. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll put the link under the video as well. Thank you so much, Megan. It was really great talking to you.
Thanks, Cameron. I enjoyed this very much. Thanks for allowing me to share.
Absolute pleasure.